This podcast series is part of a mission of the New York Intellectual Property Law Association, NYIPLA, Past Presidents Committee, to preserve a snippet of the history of our association through the eyes of our presidents, past presidents, and to provide continuity for our century-old association values and traditions for future NYIPLA leaders. I'm Rob Rando, the current president of NYIPLA. Today, we are pleased to have with us Colman Ragan. He was the 98th president of NYIPLA, and he served during the 2020 to 2021 term. Colman, please tell us a little about who you are and where you are in your career today.
Sure. As you said, my name's Colman Ragan. I've been a member of the NYIPLA for over 20 years. I am currently working at Teva Pharmaceuticals, and I'm the head of their North America IP litigation. And I came to Teva via a series of acquisitions. I've been an in-house attorney for a little over a decade. But before that, I was an IP attorney focusing on litigation, clearance, and deals in the pharmaceutical sector, first at Kenyon & Kenyon, God rest its soul, and then Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, where I worked with another past president, Tom Maloro, and actually another past president, Heather Schneider, and I guess I was with Walt Hanley as well at Kenyon & Kenyon. So lots of past presidents in my family tree of attorneys, as they say.
Yeah, quite a few connections with past presidents of NYIPLA. Colman, how did you first become aware of NYIPLA?
It was when I was a first-year associate. I was, Kenyon & Kenyon was getting everyone together to sign up for the judges' dinner, and Tom Maloro, one of the past presidents and one of my mentors, pulled me aside and said, "You should not only go to the judges' dinner, you should get involved in this association." And I took him up on that, and I did right then and there, and have been working on various committees ever since, I would say, about 2004.
Oh, that's great. So besides Tom encouraging you to do it, was there anything else that inspired you to join the NYIPLA?
That was really the first I had heard of it. I mean, I came from research, so I didn't come from a legal background. I was a research scientist and went to law school. And the first I heard of it was when I was at the law firm. And, that was my first introduction. So I, didn't know of the NYIPLA before that.
Okay. Okay, so what activities and roles did you engage in early on as a member?
I was a member of a number of committees, all that basically led into today's programs committee with meetings and forums, CLE committee as a volunteer to try and get panels together. And then at some point I became, co-chairs of committees, and you and I were together on the programs committee for many, many years. And then as new committees formed, like legislative action, and when I went in-house in corporate committee, so I just, over the years participated in as many committees as I could before joining the board, which I feel like that was about 10 years ago when I first joined the board.
Yeah, we've certainly served together in various capacities, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. Your evolution to leadership roles, did it evolve over time, or did you make it, a deferred decision that you wanted to move up in that manner?
Well, I had looked at the NYIPLA and always felt like via my membership, anytime there was a turbulence in my career, it was always an NYIPLA member who was there for me, whether it was my mentors or just my friends. And that made me want to really make sure that the future of the association was strong. And I guess that's why I wanted to get into leadership. It wasn't just being on the committees, it was seeing the value that the NYIPLA provided to its members and to the New York intellectual property community writ large, which made me want to be a part of the future of it.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk about your time as president. You probably touched on it, but can you maybe just describe the trajectory in the association leading to you becoming the president?
Well, I think it started first. I decided to be, to seek to be a chairperson of some of the committees. First meetings and forums, and then the programs committee, and from there, working on the programming and being able to see a little bit under the hood of the way the judges dinner was done, I thought to myself, I would like to maybe, if there was ever an opportunity, be on the board. And then luckily, sometime after I went in-house, I was nominated to the board. And at that point, I decided I didn't want to rotate off. If offered, I would have wanted to enter the ladder and be part of leadership. And as luck would have it, the remainder of the board and the membership elected me president.
Well, it's not just luck. We've been fortunate for you assuming that role, Coleman. And before we get into some specifics about the presidency, can you give us a general overview of the intellectual property landscape in terms of the issues confronting the IP community during your presidency?
I guess the issues during my presidency were similar to the issues, when I first entered the board. We entered a period of time where the United States Congress and even some of the courts were very skeptical of intellectual property rights. I mean, maybe even goes all the way back to the fight with Napster that the recording industry had. But certainly, fast forward into 2013, 2014, 2015, there became a very strong push to weaken intellectual property rights in the pharmaceutical sector. And being someone who's been in the pharmaceutical sector for the entirety of his career, whether it's at the bench or as a lawyer, I saw NYIPLA as a voice of reason, a pro-innovation association that would be dealing with these issues and maybe educating Congress on unintended consequences or negative consequences of weakening intellectual property rights in one particular sector.
Sure. And so now, can you provide a general overview of the various tasks and responsibilities that you were charged with during your term as president?
There's a big answer to that. That could be yes. I was in charge of a lot, right? But I mean, the president really needs to speak with, and while the president doesn't need to do absolutely every little piece of work of the NYIPLA, the president needs to really be in touch with the content generating committees and with the membership. And as you know, I had the luck of being president during the pandemic and during some moments of social upheaval. So in that time, the role of the president changed a little bit, that the president really also needed to speak to the New York intellectual property community, to the diverse members of it, to show that we're human beings too, and we understand what you're going through, and we as an association are going to be here for you, whether it's throughout the pandemic, providing you with content and things to keep your legal career going, or whether it's just a simple matter of we understand that intellectual property fits in the world writ large and what our place is in it.
Yeah, and I can attest to the fact that you handled it really well. Outstanding, as a matter of fact. And I'm proud of that. And you should be.
Well, thank you.
So did you have any specific goals or a mission that you wanted to accomplish during your time as president? And if so, what were they?
Well, coming in before the curveball that was the pandemic, I had really wanted to focus on the next generation. And I still did that, but I had to do it in a different way because, for lack of a better term, we were in, as they say in the NCAA tournament, survive and advance mode, right? We needed to make sure that we as an association figured out a way to adapt to the new workplace, which was going to be much more digital. So in order to continue to encourage the new generation, we did a lot to change our programming to be done via Zoom, via Teams, and other video conferencing format. And I think we helped the NYIPLA transform into an association that was going to meet the next generation of the members.
Yeah, I agree. So from your perspective, what was your greatest accomplishment or proudest moment during your time as president?
I can joke and say that it was, surviving the initial vote to suspend and or dissolve the association. But really, to me, it was the cohesiveness that came in that board. I've been on a number of boards for other associations. I've never been part of a more cohesive board. And the way we came together found a way to do the judges dinner, found a way to do a series of virtual programmings, which I still believe that the Supreme Court holding is that Stairway to Heaven is the greatest rock and roll song of all times, right? But we did a lot of really good programming. We really came together as an association, and that we pulled off that judges dinner, to me, it is an achievement that I'll remember for the remainder of my life.
And so will all of us who witness it. Maybe you could tell us a little more about that, Colman.
Sure. So we, as every president gets to a certain point in his or her presidency, there is the panic that is, will the judges' dinner be pulled off? Will I get a speaker? I was alleviated of having to find a speaker because it turned out to be me. But then we began to work and try and find a place where we could record it and do it virtually. And we found a platform where people could really have an interactive experience. And we, found a way to do it. But then we recorded me cooking a judge's dinner, right? Dinners submitted by the judges. So everyone got to see my kitchen. I think we edited out the video of my dog stealing the pork chop. But it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. And, we got to have Katie McCarthy, who was the immediate past president, whose judge's dinner had to be canceled. So we worked her in and we gave speeches together, and it really came out nicely. It was a lot of work, but unlike most presidents, on the day of the dinner, I didn't have to do anything. It was all pre-recorded. All I needed to do was enjoy my dinner and the very tasty cocktails that we circulated to the members.
Yeah, no, it is a fond memory, that's for sure. Well, Coleman, I was going to ask you what was your greatest challenge and your fondest memory, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you just described it.
I think so. I think the greatest challenge and fondest memory were one and the same: the judges' dinner virtually.
Yeah. So what advice can you give our younger or newer members of NYIPLA if they aspire to assume a leadership role or possibly to one day become president of NYIPLA?
Get involved. Someone once said to me, you can always do more. And I think there's no substitute, even in a world that is becoming more and more digital, there is no substitute for in-person interactions, for meeting people and exchanging ideas. I would say to the younger generation, get to in-person meetings, see your colleagues in person, interact with them, and you can always find a little bit of extra time to go and do something and network with your colleagues. It'll benefit you and them greatly. And you'll find your career taking off in ways you never thought it would. And I'll amplify that with an anecdote. I was just, an in-house patent attorney that did patent litigation, and that's all I did. But I went to a president's forum, and there I was pulled aside by Chief Judge Michel, whom I'd never spoken to other than to say, Your Honor. And he told me at that point, get involved with legislation because the changes that are going to happen to intellectual property are going to be drastic unless people like you, the next generation, get involved. And that lit a fire and took my career in a totally new direction, where I ended up becoming registered as a lobbyist and began to work on Capitol Hill. Changed my career only because I had the willingness to go and meet someone in person and talk to someone who I found utterly intimidating until that moment. And now, right, I do panels with the former Chief Judge Michel. And so I would say, show up in person. You never know what's going to happen.
Oh, that's great advice, Coleman. Is there any other advice that you might want to provide for younger members to get the most benefit out of membership in NYIPLA?
I would say it's attend the events, go in person, and that person who you find intimidating across the way, walk up and say hello. They just might say hello back.
Again, great advice. So as we wrap up this interview, Colman, do you have any final thoughts to give us?
Well, I would say that this association has been the most important association to me throughout my career. It has been the one constant. I've been at several law firms. I've worked at several companies. Over that time, I've been a member and an active member of the NYIPLA. No matter what company I work for or what firm I work for, I will be a member of this association. It has been the one constant in my career. And the people, every time something happens, it is the people of the NYIPLA who always have your back. Whether they're your opponent in a case or they're your colleague at your firm, NYIPLA members, in my experience, have been the greatest asset to the New York, not just New York, the entire intellectual property ecosphere in the United States. And it is my sincere hope that, you know, folks who are 20 years younger than me coming into the practice of law now will join this association. And anyone who asks me, I will tell them that this joining the NYIPLA was the best decision I made in my career.
Beautifully said, Colman, and I'll just add ditto. Okay, well, that completes our interview with Colman Ragan, the 98th president of NYIPLA. Thank you so much, Colman.
Thank you, Rob.